Hello everyone, Donnell Rawlings, the sharp-tongued comedian best known for his explosive energy and unforgettable catchphrase, "I'm rich, baita," from Chappelle's show, has finally broken his silence about the real reason he wanted to leave the groundbreaking sketch comedy series that made him a household name, and his revelations peel back the curtain on one of the most brilliant yet chaotic productions in modern comedy history. For years, fans assumed Donnell's departure from Chappelle's show had something to do with creative differences, scheduling conflicts, or maybe just the fallout from Dave Chappelle's own sudden and mysterious exit in 2005. But according to Donnell himself, the truth runs much deeper. It's a story about ego, exhaustion, betrayal, and the painful reality of being a supporting player in someone else's empire. To understand why Donnell Rawlings, one of the funniest, most fearless comics of his generation, ever wanted to walk away from Chappelle's show, you have to go back to the early 2000s, when sketch comedy was dying on television, and a young genius named Dave Chappelle was about to rewrite the rules of what was possible. When Chappelle's show debuted on Comedy Central in 2003, no one could have predicted how massive it would become. The sketches were raw, daring, and unapologetically honest, tackling race, politics, and pop culture with the kind of fearless satire that made people uncomfortable and hysterical at the same time. Donnell Rawlings came into the project as one of Dave's close peers from the stand-up circuit, a hustler from DC who had been grinding for years in the comedy clubs of New York and LA, sharpening his edge and learning how to turn pain into punchlines. Donnell wasn't a household name when the show started, but his timing, intensity, and street-smart humor quickly made him stand out. From his roles as Ashy Larry to the countless characters that filled the background of Dave's sketches, Rawlings became an essential part of the show's rhythm, bringing a different kind of energy, loud, real, and raw. But while the world laughed behind the scenes, pressure was mounting. The show's success was overwhelming, and what began as a creative dream quickly turned into an emotional grind for everyone involved. Donnell has admitted in interviews that working on Chappelle's show was both the greatest opportunity of his life and one of the most stressful experiences he ever had. The schedule was brutal. The writing process was unpredictable. There were creative battles, long nights, and constant uncertainty about how far they could push the boundaries before network executives stepped in. And on top of that, there was the enormous shadow of Dave Chappelle himself, a creative genius whose perfectionism and vision drove the show forward, but also made it an emotional powder keg. Donnell has often said that Dave's leadership was inspiring, but also intimidating. "Dave was like a scientist," he explained once. "He saw things other people couldn't see. But when you're working with a genius, it can also drive you crazy because the standards are so high." The tension was creative but exhausting. Every sketch had to be iconic, every joke had to hit, and when you're trying to make lightning strike twice every week, the burnout hits fast. But what really pushed Donnell to his breaking point wasn't just the workload, it was the feeling that, despite all his hard work, he wasn't being truly seen. In the comedy world, especially on ensemble shows, there's often a brutal hierarchy. Dave was the star, the face, the brand. Donnell, along with other talents like Charlie Murphy, felt the pressure of playing second fiddle, even when their performances were essential to the magic of the show. "There were times," Donnell admitted, "when I felt like I was giving everything, but people only remembered one line, that 'I'm rich' moment. They didn't see the grind behind it." That frustration grew as the show got bigger. Fans recognized him in public, but few knew his name. Producers loved his energy, but often overlooked his input. He was part of one of the greatest comedy teams ever assembled, and yet he felt invisible in the shadow of its creator. Then came the bombshell moment. Dave Chappelle walked away. In 2005, at the height of Chappelle's show's fame, with a $50 million contract on the table, Dave disappeared, literally leaving for South Africa without telling most of his team. The media went wild. Rumors of drug use, mental breakdowns, and creative For those disputes who worked on the filled show, it tabloids. was chaos. Donnell later described that time as like being in a car crash you didn't see coming. The entire production shut down, leaving dozens of cast and crew members stranded mid-project, wondering if their careers had just ended overnight. Comedy Central scrambled to release the remaining material as The Lost Episodes, hosted by Donnell and Charlie Murphy, two men left to clean up the wreckage of someone else's dream. But for Donnell, that experience was both a blessing and a curse. On one hand, it finally gave him the spotlight he'd been craving. On the other, it made him realize how unstable and toxic the entire environment had become. "We were the ones left holding the bag," he said. "We were out there trying to explain what happened, but we didn't even know ourselves." It was during that period, while promoting the lost episodes and dealing with the fallout of Dave's departure, that Donnell first started thinking seriously about leaving for good. The pressure, the confusion, the constant comparisons, it all started to eat away at him. He felt typecast as Ashy Larry, trapped in a character that fans loved but that he couldn't escape. "Everywhere I went, people would yell Ashy Larry at me," he said. "I loved that they remembered me, but I wanted them to know Donnell too." The more he tried to expand his career, the more he felt tethered to that one show. A blessing and a burden rolled into one. And when Dave eventually returned to the spotlight years later, with massive Netflix specials and global fame, Donnell was happy for his friend, but also honest about the complicated feelings it brought up. "You love seeing your brother win," he said, "but you also remember the blood, sweat, and tears you left on that set. You start wondering what it all cost you." In recent interviews and podcasts, Donnell has opened up more candidly than ever about why he wanted to leave Chappelle's show. It wasn't because he hated Dave. It wasn't because of money. It was because he realized that staying too long in someone else's shadow would kill his own creative spirit. He wanted to build his own legacy, his own voice, his own space in comedy that didn't depend on nostalgia. "I didn't want to be the guy from Chappelle's show forever," he said. "I wanted to be Donnell Rawlings, period." And in many ways, he's done just that. Over the years, he's become one of the hardest working comedians in the business, touring relentlessly, appearing on major podcasts like the Joe Rogan Experience, acting in shows like The Wire and Power Book 2, Ghost, and building a new generation of fans who know him for his truth-telling and his fearless authenticity. Not just for one catchphrase from 2 decades ago, Donnell's honesty about his time on Chappelle's show has earned him newfound respect from fans and fellow comics alike. He's spoken openly about the pressures of fame, the toll it takes on mental health, and the importance of knowing when to walk away from something that no longer feeds your soul. "You can love something and still need to leave it," he said in one emotional moment. "That's not betrayal, that's growth." And perhaps that's the real lesson of Donnell Rawlings' story. That sometimes, even when the world is laughing with you, you're fighting silent battles inside, trying to figure out who you are when the cameras stop rolling. So when Donnell Rawlings finally revealed why he wanted to leave Chappelle's show, it wasn't about drama or resentment. It was about self-preservation, about reclaiming his voice and choosing peace over chaos. He'll always be a part of Chappelle's show history, a vital piece of what made it legendary. But today, he stands as proof that walking away from something iconic doesn't mean you've failed. It means you've evolved. In the end, Donnell Rawlings didn't leave Chappelle's show because he was done with comedy. He left because he was ready to become his own show. Thanks for watching.